I think the women's sports market in our lifetime could be bigger than the men's sports market.
Welcome. I'm Maneet Ahuja, editor-at-large at Forbes and founder of Iconoclast. And we're here at the K Summit with Kara Nortman, founder and managing partner of Monarch Collective and co-founder of the National Women's Soccer League, Angel City Football Club. Kara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Kara, you launched Monarch Collective in 2023 with exclusive goal to invest in women's sports. And earlier this year, you announced that you were upping your fund to $250 million with additional capital from the likes of Melinda French Gates' Pivotal Ventures and Hello Sunshine. Congratulations on all of that.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So it seems like women's sports is definitely in vogue, but you have been investing in women's sports since well before it was mainstream. So talk to us a little bit about your journey and how, from the venture capital world, this became a key priority and an opportunity that you decided to focus on.
Yeah, well, I spent my entire career in tech. I started out in Morgan Stanley's merchant banking group. I was at Battery Ventures. I worked for IAC for Barry Diller and Victor Kaufman. So women's sports was definitely not on the bingo card necessarily, but I had a number of life-changing moments that I didn't realize were life-changing at the time. In 2015, I went to a Women's World Cup finals in Vancouver with my 3 daughters, my husband, my parents. It was when the U.S. won the World Cup for the first time in many years. Carly Lloyd scored 3 goals. And I honestly just had the time of my life. And after that game, which I think about 300 million people watched, I went to 9 stores in Vancouver to buy a jersey.
And you couldn't find one?
Couldn't find one. And then I came back and I was like, why won't anyone take my money? Came back and tried to find content for this league I didn't know existed, the NWSL. And it was like, it looked as though it was being streamed from outer space on my, 12-year-old's phone. And so it started this curiosity journey for me, just trying to understand truly why you had hundreds of millions of people watch this sport. And then there was no product and nowhere for that demand to go. And so that's what began my curiosity. And it led to a number of just conversations, things I'd bring it up every other conversation I had. And eventually I was asked to be an advisor to the U.S. Women's National Team Players Union when they were doing their early name and likeness work and looking to get paid equally to the men.
No, totally. I didn't realize until recently what a huge discrepancy women's soccer players get relative to their male counterparts and peers. It's an abomination.
Yeah, but I'd say the interesting thing is it really started as a, I wouldn't even call it a side hustle. It was just something that
curiosity and confusion.
And I had passion for it. Like I really, honestly, in a lot of ways, I had the time of my life at that game. And I wanted to watch more games.
Right.
And I wanted to watch these players and follow them on social media. And so, it was sort of working on it just because I truly wanted to see a team exist in my hometown once I realized there was a league. I didn't even necessarily need to be a part of it in the beginning, but nobody else seemed to want to start it. So eventually, we decided to go for it.
That leads me to my next question. You co-founded Angel City Football Club in 2020. And then last year, Angel City sold a controlling stake to journalist Willow Bay and Disney CEO Bob Iger for an undisclosed amount that valued the overall team at $250 million, making it the highest valuation on record for a professional women's sports team. Talk to us a little bit about how that all came together.
Yeah, it was a journey, right? So the questions, the curiosity for me began in 15. Natalie Portman and I built a relationship around soccer. We went to a meal together, and in the last 15 minutes of the meal, I started talking about my work with the National Team Players Union, and she said, how can I help? And I said, do you like soccer? And she did. She saw the real impact, the real opportunity for it to have cultural impact. And so Natalie approached me. Probably in 2019, we'd built a real friendship around watching soccer together. When the World Cup happened in France, we gathered players and actresses and women in tech and women from different communities came together. Anyway, one day she said to me, why don't we start a team together? I said, are you serious? She said, yeah, I hear you can do those things. And I said, well, I can find capital, I can build a team, but I've never built a stadium. And then it was very clear we needed someone to operate it full time. So I went and recruited in our third co-founder, who's the CEO of the team, Julie Ehrman. And the three of us together really formed Angel City in 2019. And then we raised our first $1 million of capital in a convertible note at a single-digit $1 million valuation 3 weeks before COVID in the beginning of 2020. And we, at that point in time, didn't have a franchise license, didn't have a stadium deal. We just convinced people that we thought we could do it. And then in the first season, we went from 0 to 30 million in revenue and had more season ticket holders than one of the NBA teams and one of the NHL teams in Los Angeles. And we
That's incredible.
Surprised even ourselves.
And do you think that part of that, like COVID ended up helping the situation, or do you just think that the world was ready to properly acknowledge and embrace women's sports, women's soccer, especially in this city?
Yeah, I mean, I love ascribing to this idea of, ideas happen and become sort of movements when they're meant to, but it also takes sort of the right set of ingredients. And so I think it was a lot of different things. I really do think Instagram, in a way, changed things, and social media. When I couldn't find a place to really watch the games or buy merchandise, I mean, I literally had to call a friend at one of the agencies to get a jersey in 2015. In Canada, it wasn't much easier in 19. But what I could do...
there was like no website?
I mean, it just like you had... I mean, I think I went on to Etsy, actually, and made or bought a Megan Klingenberg jersey, but it was like
it was not.
It was like a T-shirt you would print, in the 80s or 90s.
Right.
There just wasn't. Yeah, it just wasn't available. I needed a name on the back. But in terms of timing question, I think the world was ready, but also we got 100 no's, right? And our first year revenue was 4x our forecast, and so I think what we did. Also, you have to celebrate the execution. My co-founder and CEO, Julie Ehrman, is extraordinary. We would talk until 2 a.m, passing things back and forth. And I think the real key was we built mission at its core in everything we did, how we rolled out sponsorships, how we built community. We built a supporters group on Slack. I remember being at a motel in Utah with an Angel City mask, and someone came up to me, and I didn't think anyone other than my mom knew what Angel City.
Yeah.
And she said, "Wait, are you?" And she was one of the 1,000 first supporters in the Slack group. So I will say COVID, was a scary moment initially. Right. Are people going to walk back in stadiums? Is anyone going to give us more capital? Because we raised capital sort of venture capital style. Right. Whereas the founders, we owned 100% of it initially, and then brought in investors, which is a bit different than how it's done traditionally. And there were some great people who backed us to make that possible. But I do think in the end, COVID, it weirdly might have helped us because we would gather our full community on Zoom. The U.S. Women's National Team players, you have Abby Wambach and Julie Foudy, and And
there was like a willingness to embrace the community aspect and the connectivity that pre-COVID wouldn't have been there, probably, right?
Yeah, and people were like really looking. I think people were also shifting into
different interests. Yeah.
What do I want to do? What's my purpose in life?
I'm not commuting. I have a couple extra hours to burn, right?
I think COVID, I mean, it was obviously a really difficult period,
scary,
but for many, it was almost like the entire country got to go through an early midlife crisis together.
Right. Yeah. People started baking. They're like, who am I really? What are my hobbies? All of the things.
But I mean, we started working on it in 19, but we didn't actually have our inaugural season until 22. So it also did give us time to learn sports, negotiate a stadium contract with the owners of LAFC, who've been great partners for us, with us. So we had more time to figure it out. And, so, you turn your lemons into lemonade, as my mom tells me.
But that's such an interesting dichotomy, right? You're this celebrated investor throughout your entire career, and now you're building a sports team, like, from the ground up. Talk to me about, like, that shift and some of the things that maybe surprised you, or some of the leadership lessons that you brought then forward into Monarch Collective after launching Angel City.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, if you've done well in your career and you have the option of doing different types of jobs or working in different types of firms or starting something or joining something, I think you probably are naturally curious, you're probably naturally ambitious, but sometimes you just kind of follow your linear path. And I would say, I mean, one of the lessons is pay attention to what you're truly, repeatedly curious about. And where other people almost don't quite get it, but learning how to like trust your curiosity instinct. And it's sort of like, what are you waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about? Are you writing about it? Are you... I don't know, you know, I mean, a lot of people who were much, much deeper in sports than me. I mean, Julie and I set out to meet everyone in sports to learn, said women's sports are never going to work. People only want to watch soccer every 4 years. But there were a couple fundamental assumptions that we just thought would be wrong, right? And one of them was LA had too many sports teams. And we're like, well, you have to get 10, 15,000 people to show up and have fun 12 times a year in a city of 15 million. Can we do that? And how do we look at this as something that like people want to come and gather around? And you kind of looked at it from the bottoms up. I think another one that someone told me who ultimately ended up as an investor was that women's sports would never generate any media revenue, and that without media revenue, sports didn't work. And so we kind of just tried to figure out like, how could that not be true, right? A first principles type thing. How could you prove that? And so there was this, if you could get butts and seats, our thesis was you would get people to show up and give you a slot. And from there, all the economics changed. I could get into more personal leadership lessons if you'd like, but I think a lot of them is where you're curious, follow it. It doesn't need to become a business. It can just be a hobby. And if you don't need it to be a business, and you kind of stick with it and it doesn't go away, and you can kind of get to one or two things that you might be able to change. You know, it's like the women's sports market didn't exist essentially 5 years ago. And when we started Monarch, it was estimated to be $500 million, and now it's probably 8 times that. Even we underestimated how quickly it would
large
move.
again? Tell me, what is the men's sports market? What is it?
So
500?
you know, different people, different math, but I'd say it's estimated to be about $500 billion.
Yeah,
if you look
so
at
500 billion, right?
Yeah. And so the women's market, what are the latest stats you've got? I would say it's around 3 billion.
Right. Yeah. So it's just like a tiny fraction
of a percent.
Right. But then, I mean, we saw the NBA, the WNBA have better ratings than the men's basketball, right? We're seeing the ratings are showing us where consumer interests are going. And it's just this catch-up game now, right? Between investment, between just the proper infrastructure, just matching.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to an owner of an MLB team last night, and this person was talking about how...
Was it at the same dinner we were
I
at?
mean, I'm not going to out this person,
Yeah,
so...
okay.
But
That's fair.
This person was talking about how they would love to do something around crypto. And I said, well, we tried some things around crypto, loyalty, et cetera. I said, the challenge you have in the MLB is that your customer base is so much older, right? The average fan in the MLB has come down recently. But when we started Angel City, I think it was a 56-year-old, white man. Whereas like if you look in the WNBA, 50% of the audience are 17 to 34-year-olds.
Gen Z, Gen Xers, millennials. Yeah.
Very gender balanced.
Yeah.
So when I'm trying to be provocative, I'll say, which I guess is now.
Be provocative. Yeah.
I think the women's sports market in our lifetime could be bigger than the men's sports market just by virtue of the demographic, or decades younger, more female. And if you just look at what percentage of revenue comes from sponsorship, and you see everyone from Sephora to Off-White to traditional sponsors like AT&T and Ally, et cetera, coming in, it's sort of like women spend 80% of consumer spend, right? So,
right. No, that is a really good point. And even looking at F1 Academy, it's Charlotte Tilbury, it's Hello Kitty, it's different female designers.
Right. And how many people come on your podcast who are wearing Charlotte Tilbury? Well, I've got her line out now.
I think we have
right?
Yeah.
So when you and I sit down, like when Julie and Natalie and I would sit down with DoorDash or Ritual or Birdies or brands that Archer Ruse who'd never advertised before, and we talk about the products we use, our fan base, how we're going to activate with our community, you can bring these whole new swaths of partners in.
Right.
And it's a very efficient way
That
to
is
build
such
loyalty.
a good point and a connective tissue that I had not even thought about there in terms of like accelerating the business opportunity and the money and investment going into the space. So, but in addition to Angel City, Monarch now has 3 investments across National Women's Soccer League, including Boston Legacy FC, San Diego Wave FC. How do you decide which sports geographies and leagues to focus on next?
Yeah, so and we have a couple that we haven't announced yet, so coming soon.
Do you want to announce any here today?
And I just say everything we work on. I mean, some things we work on go quite quickly, and it's with people who are looking for someone who kind of understands how to price things in an imperfect market and real operational support, where we have a lot of knowledge. But much of what we work on begins as, we help someone learn a market or a sport 2 years ago, right? One of it's not our actual mission, but my unofficial mission might be we waste time with the right people.
I love that.
Well, and I mean, I'd say a couple of things we're working on right now. One of them we've been working on since before we started Monarch.
Really?
Yes, and we were just helping, a league understand, would go over and just help speak about how do you build a supporters group? How is it different than the men's side? How do you build a commercial strategy? We focus on the
and how integral is the community ecosystem around it in order for an investment or league or team to be successful?
I mean, it's critical, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of feel like in general, a huge percent of sports is best practices, right? And then, it's like the 20% that's specific to that market, specific to women's sports, specific to your community. It's focusing on what that portion is and how you're going to be different and stand out and really be authentic as to what you stand for and how you engage with your community. And everything flows from your community loving you, supporting you, challenging you, putting their butts in seats. Everything else flows from that. But to back up to your question, Monarch is a $250 million fund. We're the first and still only blind pool of capital raised that exclusively focuses on women's sports. We focus on the most mature parts of the ecosystem. So these tend to be sports where you have early signals, at least, that media revenue is up and to the right, that we spend a lot of time in participation sports too, as we expand. And where we look at building, basically businesses with an impact lens, working with control owners who are heavily like values-aligned family offices to be change agent capital alongside of them. So we're all ex-operators in sports. My partner Jasmine Robinson came out of the 49ers and Causeway and Bain, and we'll come in and work with owners day-to-day, talent, sponsors, pricing assets, negotiating leases, figuring out how to build communities. And we do very, very few transactions that we think can be global brands.
Okay. All right, cool. But what markets specifically, if we kind of go into everything that you've just kind of outlined here, do you think are underserved or most ripe for growth? That people who are just getting acquainted with the ecosystem should, where's the good starting point for them to look?
Yeah, I'd say I'll answer it a couple ways. We focus on soccer, basketball, golf, tennis, US and Europe, though we spend time in other countries. We're often spending time in things. We're very thesis driven. So we're most focused on things that are investable in the next 2 years, but we're already working on things 5 years out. And then I would say it's an important distinction between women's and men's sports. So women's sports, think of it as more of an emerging market, right? Where even in the most mature segments, you take the NWSL, the WNBA, the WSL in England, really other than women's tennis, right? The LPGA, et cetera. You are doing core infrastructure building. Who's the best talent to bring in? It's not the same executive you necessarily had in your men's sports team. So where are you sourcing from sports? Where are you sourcing from tech? Where are you sourcing from media? Who are the early partners who really want to innovate with you, help you break records on the sponsor side, but activate your base in a way that means something to them and you? And how do you get creative? How do you have Sephora boxes parachute from the sky? Right. But I'd say the early days of we're still in the part of women's sports where there's almost like an asymmetric risk profile.
Right.
Where it's very hard to get access to the most mature sports, and it's kind of the downside is it's capped by franchise value or rights value, but it's an everyday roll up your sleeves kind of thing. It's not you're building org structure.
There's no low hanging fruit, is what you're saying.
It's hard,
you have
everyday
to be
work,
plugged in and very uniquely positioned, like it sounds like Monarch Collective is, you and your key partners, and able to be able to unlock that value, or even to like source how to build that value.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we worked with some incredible family offices, and it really is. With many of them, we're working with them just to drive returns, but with others, we're like, they're coming in alongside of us, or we're fielding bids with them, or we're coming into a team who wants us to come in and do work side by side with them. So, for sure.
So we touched on this earlier, but women's sports is projected to earn $2.35 billion globally this year, which is a 25% increase from the previous year. Where do you see the largest slice of revenue in women's sports coming from? And what areas do you have potential for more growth?
Yeah, so I mean,
is it sponsorships? Is it
slice and dice those numbers a
Yeah.
lot of different ways. They typically don't involve tennis. But they do typically involve, for example, a fourth of World Cup revenue. So I think you see a majority of that coming from the sports I just mentioned. And I would say there's kind of three primary revenue streams at the team level. It's ticketing, it's partnerships, or it's ticketing and game day, partnerships and merchandise, with those first two being a lion's share. And then at the league level, it's media rights, right? And if you look at the media rights deals in the WNBA, the NWSL, the two major leagues in the US, and the WSL, which is the league in England, and then you have Germany and others. What you're seeing is you have annual contracts now that are, call it anywhere from $20 million to $200 million. But like in the WNBA, it's a $2 billion 10-year deal. The NBA is in total, I think the total deal is a $76 billion deal. So you're still in the very early stages when you have viewership catching up, tune in, getting on the right channels and platforms.
And so how much do game day revenues factor into this equation?
Hugely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what I would say is the way we look at things at Monarch is how can you build a sustainable P&L at the team level with the things you control at the team level. It's packing stadiums, it's partnership activations, it's creating your own content that pushes that out. And so you should be able to break even or get close to break even just with team controlled revenue around ticketing, game day, fan fest, auxiliary content you produce, merchandise, things of that nature. And so how do you build excellence there? What's in the team? Where are you using the best third parties? Like that is a huge part of the women's sports P&L while the media revenue catches up.
And what about the infrastructure, the stadiums, training facilities to improve game day income? I mean, that's also very high cost, right? But is it we're too early in the early innings to be investing in those types of long term?
I mean, it's really matching risk return profile with what you're investing in. So if you're a real estate investor, then that's and you look at sort of like what you can do with prime real estate. And many cities, by the way, want women's sports practice facilities and even stadiums downtown and to build around it what it means to the community. In Boston, for example, as part of our core investment, we invested in both the team and the stadium, right? The facility is a part of it, but in that case, it's a huge joint civic effort. It'll be only the second stadium or open air facility on public transport in downtown Boston, and when it's not being used by the team, it's being used by the community for public purposes, and we share in the sponsorship revenue. So I think you definitely. It's case by case, and there's some places where it may not make economic sense for somebody who invests in the team to also invest in the stadium. But in general, I think you're finding different pockets of capital coming into both, and a huge effort around practice and training facilities, which are also kind of facilities you can partner on and sponsor. So you do look at, is there foot traffic? Is it near a highway? Is this a desirable part of town? Do athletes want to come here? I mean, the most important thing is, do athletes want to come here and have the best experience?
What ways do external factors like regulation, media rights, shifts, cultural changes, international tournaments all play factors into your equation? Huge, right?
Like people will say, like, did Caitlin Clark change the business? Did the media rights deal that the WNBA got change the business? Did Angel City change the business? And I think the truth is that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, right? 60,000 people showed up in England to watch the Dick Care ladies play soccer 100 years ago. Billie Jean King got equal pay for women in tennis 50 years ago, but I'd say in the last 6 years, you have the sequence of Angel City really built the first commercial P&L. It proved to people it was possible. Other capital and owners came in. And so then you have Angie and Chris. You just have a lot of very professional people coming in to buy these teams in stake, including, Bob Iger and Willow Bay. But Caitlin Clark then, she elevated the visibility of a second sport, right? And there was a ton of foundational work outside of Caitlin Clark. It was a rivalry with Angel Reese. It was what was happening in the NCAA. But what I think is important is these spikes kind of need to build on each other. And then behind it, to build the consistency, you need great owners and constant execution. But I think we're ready, right? Like, we need things that unify us. There's a real movement part of women's sports that's just special. Come to a game. Come to an Angel City game.
I would love to. Is that an official invite?
Official invite.
Okay.
I mean, San Diego or Boston too. Franchise opener in Boston is happening soon. But I mean, I would love to host you at any of them. But what you'll see is the players stick around after and sign autographs, and there's people in the stands who look just like that player, and it's every kind of person with a picture of, like, Sarah Gordon, you're my hero, or Claire Emsley, you're my hero. But also it's being held by 14-year-old boys. And so
that's awesome.
You feel like you're a part of building something in a way that brings you back and almost makes it this country club you didn't know you could be a part of.
That is such a great analogy. So is your phone ringing off the hook right now with everyone and their mother wanting to get into investing in women's sports? And then how do you think about, like, who you bring into the equation? Obviously, like, you upped your fund by $100 million. Obviously, there's a lot of interest there, but we're just scratching the surface, as we've kind of said over the last 25 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we try to help anyone who we think is values aligned and could be beneficial. So I'll do a lot of first calls with people that we'll never work with formally. And sometimes they turn into somebody we work with formally, but it may not be for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something Julie and I did a lot. We sort of talk about open sourcing the playbook for women's sports, and now Jasmine Robinson and I do that. We really try to be thoughtful about who we partner with, and we say no to certain people. Who just kind of want to do things the same way, right? Like, we want to invest in teams, leagues, and rights, but, that capture the world's attention and have real cultural impact. I do think it's a really exciting place for families to come in. You can really have impact on your community. We focus on representation, and we think that's important because the fan base is different, the sponsorship base is different, and, like, if you're living and breathing your sports team in your community, things tend to go a little bit differently. But yeah, I mean, I think the interest is exciting, and sometimes I educate people on things often that we don't do, but we're taking a really long-term view on, but it's great for them. They grew up playing that sport, and I can explain why it's not the right risk profile for us and the work we've done to understand it, but why, for them, it could be the right thing, and do they want to show up and be a part of, like, building it from scratch? So, I mean, the phones are definitely ringing a lot more. Like, when we started Monarch, we were definitely a novel, exotic strategy. And now I think people really understand both where it fits in the investor portfolio and that we have the best LP meetings of all time. We have the most fun. And they're joyful, right? And we need joy these days.
Well, Kara Nortman, founder and managing partner of Monarch Collective, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.